Okay, well, welcome everybody. Yes, as Jonathan said, I'm going to be talking about Demand Driven Institute and the courses that they have available to us. So I'm going to be talking about 5 courses today. The Adaptive Enterprise Fundamentals, which is really a sort of it's a fundamentals program, really, to get you into thinking about flow in your organization as opposed to cost. Then I'll talk about the flagship program that has always been there from the Demand Driven Institute, which is the Demand Driven Planner course. We've recently added a one-day add-on to the Planner course, which looks at complex manufacturing environments, and that could be of interest to you. More recently, we've added a demand-driven distribution course because we found that people doing the demand-driven planner course, a lot of people were purely in logistics and distribution, and they didn't want to know about manufacturing and bills and materials. So we've got a specific course for people that are in logistics and distribution. And then we have for top management, middle and top management, we have the demand-driven leader course. So let's start off with the Adaptive Enterprise course here. Adaptive Enterprise Foundations. It's a 2-day program that really gets people into looking at where we should be going as far as flow-based tactics are concerned, as opposed to cost-based tactics. It really suits pretty well everybody in the organization, from planners all the way up to CEOs, SOP teams, operations, marketing, human resources. And it all revolves around a book called The Missing Links, which is written by Caroline Mondon, who is very involved in the French side of SAPICS and the Demand Driven Institute as well. This book is a textbook. It's a novel. Okay, it's not a textbook, it's a novel. And it actually highlights a company she used to work with many years ago that's in manufacturing furniture for the home and for businesses and for yachts, actually. And it takes you through their thought processes and their changes as they go through this business. And why isn't my thing changing now? Okay. And so it's a very, very nice course based on this particular book. There are 4 basic modules in this particular course. And we start off by looking at the new normal that we're finding in our industry, basically the VUCA world that we're involved in, and the company in its variable environments and some of the concepts of supply chain management. And we go back and we have a look at the conventional way that we've been doing the planning over a number of decades. And then we start looking at some of the giants of industrial flow, people like Ono at Toyota and Eli Goldratt, Theory of Constraints, Edward Deming, and of course, Orlicky and MRP. And then we go in and say, well, how do we move from this linear type of planning that we've been involved in for a number of years and get into this adaptive planning? We start talking about this bigger picture from the Demand Driven Institute, which is the Demand Driven Adaptive Enterprise, and a maturity model to help you get there. There is a professional exam for this course. It's not too difficult. It's quite a nice little exam. It's a 3-hour, but it's proctored exam, which is very different to the exams I'll talk about for the rest of the programs. And it's a closed book exam, and you get 2 attempts. So if you don't get through it on the first time, then you can go and rewrite it again. Let's look at the Demand Driven Planner, which is the flagship program for the Demand Driven Institute. And I think currently there are over 22,000 people that have taken this course globally around the world. It's designed for people that want to implement or maintain a demand-driven MRP environment in their manufacturing or distribution environment. Again, planning people, purchasing people, supply chain people, those people that are involved in your inventory replenishment and execution are the targets for this course here. And it consists of 13 modules. And we start by looking at planning in the modern world. and the importance of flow and the power of decoupling. Decoupling your supply chain so that we can mitigate that bullwhip effect that we've been plagued with over the decades. And then we go into an introduction for demand-driven materials requirements planning, which consists of 5 components, really. And the first one is, where do we strategically position inventory in our supply chain? That's a very important part to start with. And we do the same with the distribution network as well. Once we've decided where we want to keep our inventory, then we start looking at the buffer profiles and the buffer levels for that particular piece of inventory at that point in the supply chain. Of course, the environment in which we're working is continuously changing. And so we need to dynamically and automatically adjust those buffers. And so we have this strategic positioning, buffer profiles and levels, buffer adjustments, and this forms an operating model for us. And once we've got that operating model running and being continuously adjusted, we can then get into the demand-driven planning, which uses the net flow calculation, which is unique to the Demand-Driven Institute courses. And interestingly enough, we have visible and collaborative execution attached to the planning, something we've never had before with traditional planning systems that we've used over the decades. And then we start looking at a higher level. That's the tactical level and the strategic levels within this, the planning as well, and the demand-driven sales and operations planning process, and finish up with a summary. Again, there is a certification program, but these programs that I'm going to talk about now are a little bit different to the one for the AEF course. Here we're at a slightly higher level in the Bloom's taxonomy, if you're familiar with that. So if you're familiar with writing SAPICS exams, these tests or these exams are a little bit higher than that. We give you case studies. You get 50 questions, and you've got case studies which you need to analyze and evaluate and then apply those demand-driven concepts to them. So it's not a particularly easy exam because it is an open book exam. And if any of you have ever done open book exams, they are a little bit more tricky. They are non-proctored open book exams, 3 hours, 50 questions. You have to analyze some case studies. And again, you get 2 attempts. So if you don't get through the first time, then you can have a free rewrite. I did mention earlier that we've got a 1-day add-on program to the Demand-Driven Planner, which looks at the more complex manufacturing environments and uses a lot of the theory of constraints, time buffers, capacity buffers, finite scheduling at control points. We go into a lot of that stuff. So we've incorporated a lot of the TOC stuff into the demand-driven methodologies. And again, there are 6 programs here, or 6 modules to the program. We look at this flow-based operating model as opposed to a cost-based one. We look at this demand-driven operating model, which doesn't only encompass the inventory buffers, but the time and capacity buffers and the finite scheduling at control points as well. So we look at scheduling, operation, execution, and the demand-driven S&OP process as well with the program summary. And again, as I mentioned with the DDP, we have a certification exam. And again, it's a non-proctored 3-hour exam, open book exam, 2 attempts if you don't get through the first time. And again, it's at that slightly higher level where we want you to analyze and evaluate some case studies and then apply the methodology to these case studies. I mentioned earlier that we had a problem with the DDP course because we have a lot of people coming on there that are purely in distribution and logistics, and they weren't interested in all the manufacturing bit. So last year, DDI put the demand-driven distribution course together, and this focuses purely on the demand-driven principles in the supply chain. Again, planning people, purchasing people, supply chain people, inventory replenishment and execution people. These are the types of people that really can benefit from this course. And we talk about distribution today and the importance of flow. A lot of it's very similar to the demand-driven planner, but we leave a lot of the manufacturing stuff out. Again, we've got the five components of DDMLP: strategically coupling or decoupling with your inventory, setting up the buffer profiles and levels, dynamic buffer adjustment, the the demand-driven planning and execution. And something new that we put in this course, and it will get put in the other courses as well, and I really like this because we call it the inventory target ratio. We've always had a problem to determine, well, do we have the right amount of inventory? How much have we got? What's the value? And it doesn't really tell you whether you've got the right amount for where you are at this point in time in your supply chain. This is a brilliant measure, this inventory target ratio. And we've included it in this course, but it will get added into all the other courses as well. Again, there is a professional certification. And again, 50 questions, 3 hours. We want you to analyze and evaluate some case studies in a distribution environment and apply the DDMLP methodologies. And again, you get those 2 attempts. The last course has been around for quite a while, and it was developed as a 2-day program for senior and mid-level management. One of the things we found that when you implement demand-driven down in operations on the factory floor or in the warehouse or wherever, we found that top management was still trying to manage these people in a cost-based way, and we're trying to put flow-based methodology into the operations. And of course, there was a lot of head banging. And so we needed to have a course for the leadership in companies to get them to understand that they need to be looking at flow as opposed to cost. And this is really where this course comes in. So it's important for top management to understand what you're trying to do down in operations. So it's there for top management with the ability to design, implement, and particularly sustain a demand-driven operating model, and how to set the parameters in the demand-driven S&OP process as well. 7 modules we've got in this course. Today's business landscape. So we're looking at, what business is like today as it was in the past, and then striving for relevant information. And we talk a lot about relevancy because a lot of times we're making decisions on things that are not really relevant. And then we talk about the bigger picture, which is the demand-driven adaptive enterprise model, which encompasses not only operations, but tactics and strategy as well, based on this demand-driven methodology. And then we've got so we've got the operational model. I mentioned that demand-driven operating model, which is operations. We've got demand-driven sales and operations planning, which is the tactical portion. And then we've got the strategic portion, which is the adaptive sales and operations planning. Again, same exam. You get case studies, 50 questions, 3 hours, open book exam. You have to analyze and evaluate some case studies and apply the methodologies. If you've taken any of these courses, then you get lifetime access to the course material. And these 2 people are Carol and Chad Smith, Carol Patak and Chad Smith. They are the partners at the Demand Driven Institute. And occasionally they run online webinar series for these courses. These are recorded and they are available to you. So if you've taken the Demand Driven Planner course, you get access to the latest webinar, webinars that Carol and Chad have run online. You also get access for life to the latest course material. And if any of you have done the Demand Driven Planner way back, I think we started doing this over 10 years ago, it has changed dramatically, the course material. You have lifetime access to the updated materials. You also have available sample exam questions so that you can try those out. And there's a nice little video of Chad answering those questions as well with some of the questions and giving you some idea of how you might tackle these exams, which, as I mentioned, are a slightly higher level than perhaps you're used to. SAPICS is going to be running some of these courses publicly, and first of all, we've got an online demand-driven planner course between the 6th and the 11th of March. We'll be running this over 4 half days, And then we're going to attach onto it on the 13th and 14th, 2 half days for the demand-driven operations course. We're planning on bringing out Carol Mondon, who wrote that book, The Missing Links, to run the Adaptive Enterprise course on the 6th and 7th of June, which is the 2 days before the conference. And so we got that in the planning stage. And we're hoping to run the demand-driven distribution course after the conference sometime. I don't know, we haven't determined a date yet, probably July or August. And then to run the demand-driven leader course September or October as well, over 4 half days, probably online. These programs are also available self-study. So if you want to do a self-study, I can help you out with that. Just contact me. We can also run in-house courses as well. So it's just a matter of contacting me and we can organize something to suit your particular company or your requirements. So you can get a hold of me at Demand Driven on those courses there, on those numbers there. Sorry. And I implore all of you to go on to this website here, demanddriveninstitute.com. Okay. If you go to the top right-hand corner here, sign up, because you will get then access to a certain parts of this website which you wouldn't be able to get into otherwise. And then if you go to this tab here, you can get information on all the courses that I've spoken about. And if you go to this tab here, you can get more information about the certification exams. So that's my story. Any questions?